Hi, my name is Dr. Michael Yang, author of The Lean Gene and creator of the Lean Gene program. Let me jump right in and answer two of the biggest questions, the most frequent questions I seem to get. Do I have a lean gene? You do. As a matter of fact, you have lots of them. And question number two, we can turn them on for you. And that's what we're going to be talking about for the next 8 weeks. We're going to go week by week, and I'm going to give you a breakdown of what that's going to look like. But first, let's take a big overview. All right, there's a problem. You know this. Look around. 2/3 of the country is overweight. Now, that could be incredibly overweight, and that could be slightly overweight, or it may just be 5 pounds that's just going to make you look fantastic at the beach this summer. In any case, the question of how do I get lean and how do I lose weight is a huge and pressing problem, both personally, I see it in the clinic every day, and nationally as a national public health issue. So, how do we get at that? Well, clearly not the way we've been doing it, so you can look around. The public messaging we've been at has not been very effective, whether it comes from the government, whether it comes from the family, whether it comes from schools, whether it's the information we pass around on the internet. Clearly something needs to change. The old model just isn't working for us anymore. Guess what? Exercise more, eat less. Have you heard that before? I hear it all the time. It's actually the message that I used to preach when I first started out. 15 years ago, I got into the world of managing people's weight, dealing with people's metabolic issues. It's when I started my career. And what do you do when you start out? You do what everyone else is doing. Guess what doesn't work? Hi, patient. Here's your solution. You need to eat less and you need to exercise more. Now, obviously that's a critical component, but you know what doesn't work? That repetitive message. And if it did work, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in today. So I came up with something different. And it took me a long time. It did. Years and years of trial and error, and frankly, there was error, and there was certainly plenty of trials and tribulations. As a matter of fact, I remember my first weight loss group. I was working with another colleague of mine, and she was an old pro, and we decided to get together and form this group with a group of her diabetic patients. And the lessons we learned, holy cow, talk about eat less, exercise more, never being the answer. And if you want to nitpick, those are critical components, but how do we do them? The question is not the how. The question is the how. The question is the why. The what, the tactics, that tends to be a little bit less of the issue. But let me stop right there. This is another question I get. Over the years, I get typically 3 types of patients, 3 types of clients, and you might be one of those 3. The first one is the easiest one to deal with. And if you're in this group, you are lucky. Those are the tactics folks. Those are the folks that don't want the big picture. They don't want the big story. They don't want the biological background. They don't want to hear the information. They want that one little piece of information that's going to take them from point A to point B. Those are the easy ones. And we're going to give you plenty of that. Over the next 8 weeks, over all the information we're going to give you outside of these videos, in your workbook, and in the extra information you're going to get, there'll be plenty of strategies and plenty of tactics. All right, so you, don't worry. Group number 2. These are the people, they want that information. They need a little bit more motivation. They need to understand, how does this all piece together? They have seen the tactics and they have seen the strategies, and it's still not the right thing for them. Right? For them, it's more of a motivational, behavioral, psychological issue. They need to get more of that, not just information, but they need the motivation and the skill set. All right, we're going to combine that as well. And the third group, these are the biggest group in terms of how they view the world. And I'll tell you right now, this is the way that I view things. I'm happy to give you tactics. I want you to look amazing in your bikini. I want you to be ripped on the beach in the trunks. I want you both together having a great time on vacation. I will give you all that. What I also want to give you is the bigger picture. I want you to understand a little bit how your body works. I think that's so critically important. A lot of times, if it's just tactics, that's when we fall for the same tactics that are all over the internet, that are being sold to us every which way you can look. And guess what? That doesn't work. Tactics, short term, yeah, look around. The grapefruit diet, the crazy pants diet, the I rode in my unicorn diet, they all work. They all have a celebrity attached to them, and there's a ton of money being pushed to make sure that you think that it's legit. Big heaving sigh, it isn't. And if it was, again, look around. We wouldn't be in the state we're in now. So the bigger picture is the 50,000 foot view. It's the long-term health view. And that's where I come from. So I'm happy to give you phase 1, tactics, simple stuff. I'm happy to give you some informational, motivational background, some psychological info that's going to really push you along. What I'm really excited about is giving you an understanding of where you fit in, you personally, into the grand scheme of things, and what that means for you, for your family, for your spouse, for your kids, for your community, and for the world. Frankly, it's true. The decisions that we make affect not just us, but everyone around us. Now, I'm going to warn you in advance. There's going to be some soapbox. At some point, I'm going to get up on my soapbox and I'm going to tell you, look, you can be different. And the beauty of being different is not only do you get to change, not only do you get to feel great, but you affect the lives of those around you. Specifically your children. Maybe you have them. Maybe you have grandkids. You're probably going to have them if you don't. So this information is so important for them. And specifically, I'm going to give you a tiny sneak peek as to why. Because what you do affects not just your genes, not just your DNA, but the DNA of your children. Even before you're pregnant, and we're going to get into this, the changes that you make will play out generations down the road. This is brand new science. This is why this is so awesome, right? What you do is putting money in the bank, not just into your bank account, but into the trust fund of your kids and the trust fund of your grandkids. Think about that for a second. So, 5 pounds, 10 pounds, sure. 50 pounds, 100%. 150 pounds, I see it in the clinic every day. Wherever you are on the continuum of wanting to lose weight, of wanting to get lean, of wanting to get healthy, and whatever your motivation is, I have that for you. Now, you can't please everyone. I learned that. Here's my first little anecdote for you. Here's how I learned. 10 years ago, I was doing a little bit of research and a little bit of fun down in Barbados in the Caribbean. And the water in Barbados, you ever been down there? You've been down deep in the Caribbean, you know this is like. The water is clear, crystal clear. 50 feet of visibility, 70 feet of visibility. It's the same as looking across a valley. It's just crystal clear water. It is beautiful. It is so warm. And you're just enjoying yourself in between your research. You're doing very valuable research. But occasionally go for a swim. So I'm swimming. I'm at the beach. And I notice some other tourists near me. I hear 2 guys talking. And I hear one guy turn to the other guy and goes, you know, this water it's just not refreshing enough. It's a little too warm. And it dawned on me at that critical moment, this is 10 years ago, you can't please everybody. The water was too warm. It just wasn't refreshing enough for this guy. I was like, oh, mental note. You can't please everyone. But I'm going to do my best to please all of you to say this. If you are not a person who wants the technical side, you don't want the biology, you don't want the history, you don't want all of these pieces, bear with me. I'm not going to give you too much, but I'm going to give you some, and I think it's going to enrich your experience. Not just in the next 8 weeks, not just in your own personal story, but I think it's going to bear some fruit. You might come up with some new ideas. You might have a new way of looking at things. Stick with me. All right, if you're on the other end, you want more science, you want more facts, you want more research, you want to know it all. You're like the Geraldo Rivera, you want everything. Guess what? I'll give it to you. All you got to do is ask. I'm going to give you a stack of references. I'm going to give you a stack of research that's going to come along with these programs. And if you want more, believe me, I am such a research nerd. I'm happy to give you stacks of this stuff. All in your email. Anything you want, get at me on Facebook. Email me. Do it all. Ask for more information. I am so happy to give it to you. I will be your veritable weight loss lean library. You ask, I will give it to you. So, on either end, and if you're in the middle, this might be just absolutely perfect for you. We're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to have a little bit of jokes. We're going to have a little bit of research. We're going to have a little bit of information. We're going to give a lot of motivation. We're going to give you a lot of skills and a lot of stuff that's going to help you change the behavior. That's really what it's about, right? The simplest change, the simplest tactic is only as good as how well you implement it. Eat less, exercise more. Sure, sounds good. How? Why? Let's crack those two, and we got this. So, that's an idea of just where we're at in terms of how we're going to structure things. Now, what are you also going to get? You're not just going to get 8 modules that you can listen to, you can watch. You're also going to get, like I said, we're going to send you a stack of resources. You can dive into those if you're wanting more information, you're up late one night and you just want to get some science stuff into your brain so that it's going to really knock you out and put you to sleep. Great way to do it. If you have a little bit of insomnia, we're going to talk about sleep. If you have insomnia, crack into some really deep microbiology. That'll put you out in 2 to 3 minutes. Trust me. Reading research horizontally is a recipe for a really solid nap. Now, we're going to give you plenty of research. We're going to give you a Facebook page, a private Facebook page that you can go to with the thousands of other people that are going through this program as well. You might make a friend. You might learn something from your peers. And I know this sounds maybe a little too camp for you, but take my word for it. The first thing I learned from my first weight loss group 15 years ago was your peer group, your community, is even more critical, I'm going to say it, even more critical than the people that are giving you information. More important than your doctors. The people who you surround yourself with, the people you're on the same mission with, those are the people that are going to help you get to that next stage. We all struggle. And oftentimes the difference between falling down and tripping and being like, I can't get up, is somebody reaching down, grabbing your hand and pulling you back up. Great statistic. If your closest friend is obese, you are 57% likelier to become obese yourself. What does that tell us? Look around you. The people who are closest to you, your closest friends, your family, if they're unhealthy, if they're unwell, if they want to make changes, they're either going to pull you back into their trajectory or you're going to have to work real hard to help bring them along. So the people, your peers, like the folks you're going to find on this Facebook page, are there to help you out, answer some questions, and provide you that extra motivation that's going to, in that moment of struggle perhaps, should I do this? Should I eat this? Should I go here? Should I do that? They may be the thing that puts you over the top. So we're going to give you a community, a built-in community, which is fantastic. We're going to give you extra information as much as you want. We're going to give you transcripts. Say you don't want to listen, say you don't want to watch, say you're a reader, we're going to give you the transcripts. You can get into it that way. So, lots of different ways to access this information. Now, that all being said, let me get to the secret bit, the great reveal. Non-responders. Let me say it again, non-responders. Non-responders are people who don't respond. I don't know if, let me take you back to high school just for 1 second. Do you remember the bell curve? Is this a concept that's familiar to you? Basically, it means that, well, like a bell, you have people at either end and in the middle. So, some people, very straightforward, we'll take exercise as an example. You give them your standard prescription for exercise. Go run for 30 minutes a day. You can expect a certain amount of change in their weight, in how well their heart works, in any number of factors. But guess what? That's that block right in the middle. Now, there's a whole block that does really, really well, the hyper responders. You know who they are? They're professional athletes. Now there's the other side. What about those folks? The people who try what they're being told. Eat less, exercise more. And it's not working for them. Those are non-responders. Non-responding has to do with genetics. This is the future. The past of medicine, we've seen. It's not working so great. The future of medicine is personalized medicine. It's based on genetics. It's based on our individual little snowflake, personal, unique foibles, and all that boils down to is our genetic code. But the genetic code, it's stuck. We can't change that. We're born with what we got. Nothing else can unravel it, change it up, turning it into something completely different. I can't become 6'7", and I also can't become 4'3". It's not going to happen. But wait. This is when concept number 2. This is the 2 big reveals. This is the whole basis of everything I'm about to tell you over the next 8 weeks. Non-responders and epigenetics. Don't let that word fool you. Epigenetics just means epi, on top of. Genetics means genetics, your DNA, right? We can change. I'm going to say this so slowly because this is so pivotal and so exciting. We can change the way that our DNA works based on the choices that we make in our day-to-day lives. For good or for evil. All right? This is, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just take a second, and honestly, it is worth it. I know this sounds like it's super duper intense, but the thing that changes everything that we do in terms of our bodies, the skin that we make, the foods that we want, the vision that we have or are losing over the course of the years, that's all driven by our genetics. Now, I can tell you, we thought this was completely immutable. We thought this is unchangeable. This is all brand new stuff. The last 30 years. It turns out that making certain choices, eating certain types of foods and avoiding other types of foods, doing certain types of exercise, not doing other types of exercise, the kind of sleep that we get, the kinds of thoughts that we think, our personal psychology, the choices that we make, the air that we breathe, and the company that we keep will affect our genetic code. That is a huge key. It was hidden for millions of years, and now we're just starting to uncover it. How exciting is that? That's what we're going to get into. This is the basis of what we're talking about. And if I seem excited, it's because I am. Everything I've been doing in terms of research has led me to this program. And I've seen it work in the clinics. I've seen it work at my clinics. I've seen it work with my colleagues. You have to tailor a program specific to an individual. Find out where they're at, where it's coming undone, and that's the point that you intersect. Take sleep, for example. We're going to talk about sleep in one of our modules. Sleep is critical. For some people, they get incredible sleep. Guess what? That's not the answer for them. But 2/3 of America is getting poor sleep. Odds are you're one of them. Put 3 people in a room, 2 of them are getting poor sleep. Sleep directly affects the way in which we create fat, the way we store fat, the way we use fat. If we're not talking about sleep, what are we talking about? This is a critical piece. People are non-responders to the standard message of weight loss because of their sleep. 2/3 of them. We're going to talk about sleep. I've seen this. I've personally seen this. In fact, just a couple months ago, I had a great case. This guy comes in and he needs to lose 15. And he's doing everything right. Everything. I mean, to the point of excess. And he's fatigued. He's a type A guy. He's an executive. He's hitting the gym. He's doing the foods. He's doing everything. This is Los Angeles, right? He's got money to burn, so he's got everyone in his ear telling him what to do. I come in there. I'm like the lean whisperer. I said, what about sleep? He says, I don't need sleep. I'm this guy. I'm taking care of business. I said, but what about sleep? I present him all this information. I browbeat him a little bit. And finally, he gets on board. 2 weeks, 5 pounds. That's it. He'd been trying to lose 5 pounds. Like that would be his absolute goal. 6 weeks later, he's 10 pounds down. How? Just adjusting his sleep. The thing that is the easiest thing to take care of for many of us. Just get more rest. Makes a huge difference. We're going to get into that. Mindfulness, meditation, the thoughts that we think and the focus that we have. Weightlifting for the brain. We pump iron, we hit the bench press, we do our squats, we do our sprints, we do our runs. Some of us do. Anyway, how do you lift the biggest muscle, the most important muscle in our heads that controls every last bit of our bodies, right? Their brain. How do we exercise that? Because if it's flabby, the rest of us is going to be flabby. It's an obvious metaphor, but we're going to get into that, right? The way in which we get jacked in our brains, brain pumped, is through mindfulness and meditation. We have a whole module on that. Diet, and by diet I mean not going on a diet. I'm talking by diet, I say the foods that we eat. Obviously, that is probably the most critical piece of all of this. When we talk about getting lean, losing weight, the foods that we eat are so important. But what I'm going to tell you is going to be surprising. Because some of the foods that we eat affect our genes in a certain way, as opposed to other foods that we eat that affect our genes in a certain way. And again, and again, and again, and again, I'm going to tell you hundreds of times, by the time you're done with this, this is going to be so fresh in your brains. The choices that we make affect the way in which our DNA produces proteins and sends signals out to the rest of our bodies. Not just to our fat cells, but to our thyroid, which regulates our metabolism. I'm so sluggish and I'm so fatigued, I can't get off the couch. Slow metabolism, slow thyroid function. Well, the thyroid is affected by all these factors. Hormone regulation. Hormone and fat are like this. So, if we can change the way that hormones are produced, we can adjust hormone levels, we can change the way we look, the way we feel, how long we live. Possibly, right? So if we can affect heart disease, if we can affect diabetes, we can affect our longevity. Now remember, what's probably not going to kill you is a shark, is lightning, is an axe murderer. What probably will, unfortunately, heart disease and cancer. Both largely preventable. Let me take a step back. Cancer might be a good point. Let's discuss epigenetics. How does epigenetics work? I'll give you a real simple analogy. Imagine a guy, we'll talk about cancer. Now, as you probably know, cancer cells are growing in your bodies right now, this very second, a bunch. And our body's doing a great job of silencing and killing off those cells before they become tumors and turn into full-blown cancer. It's this constant balance. Cells are constantly growing. Cells are dying, cells are growing, cells are dying, cells are growing. And some of those cells, the wiring gets a little bit faulty. It happens. Now, if that gets out of control, all of a sudden, that can become a cancer. And this is happening constantly in our bodies. Our body does a really good job of regulating that for the most part. So an easy way to think about that is, think out a production line of cars. And the cars are coming along, we're making them and they're rolling out into the world. And there's the foreman, and his job is to stand there and kind of look and say, oh, that's a good car. That's a good car. That's a good car. That one, no, pull it. That's your cancer cell. So your body does this great job of regulating. Good cell, good cell, good cell. Pull it, get out. Now, eventually, the foreman starts to get a little older. He's been in the job for 35 years. Good car. It's a good, I'm getting sleepy. Guess what? Bad car comes by. He misses it. That car goes out in the world, and all of a sudden, the tires fall off, and it takes out a small school bus full of children. Terrible tragedy. That's cancer. Terrible tragedy. Now, that's how genetics works, especially when it comes to cancer. Very simple model, something you can wrap your brain around. Epigenetics. Here you go. So genetics, epi, on top of. Everything that we do as shareholders in this company that is our bodies affects that foreman. Now, if we take that foreman and we don't give him enough sleep, oh, he's so sleepy, he can hardly keep his eyes open. Bad cars are coming by all the time. What if we don't feed him right? He's fatigued, he's hyper, he's anything, right? He's not doing well. If we mistreat the foreman, the way in which he does his job, regulating this flow of automobiles that are going out in the world and being successful, fantastic, awesome Ferraris, or busted up lemons that are causing trouble and getting recalled, that's on us. And those are the epigenetic factors. That's the air we breathe, the water that we drink, and everything else that goes into us being us affects this grand foreman that is watching all these cars and regulating our systems. That's epigenetics in a nutshell. So, what are we going to talk about for the next 8 weeks? How we can keep our foreman as strong and as healthy as possible so that he can keep making the great regulatory choices. That car looks fantastic. Hold on, there's actually a tiny little bit of, give it a little buff, extra shiny. That foreman can be on the top of his game, optimized health. Or we can speed that foreman into retirement, and along the way, he's going to be making some pretty poor choices. And that, in a nutshell, is how epigenetics works. Now let's extend that metaphor just a little bit further. We understand genetics. He's our foreman, he's watching the cars. We understand epigenetics. How we treat that foreman is going to affect how well he works. Let's take it one step further. Let's talk about non-responders. NRs, as I call them, non-responders. That foreman has to eat. We got to feed him something. But what we feed him may be different than what we feed another foreman. Seems pretty obvious, right? Some people like Chinese food, some people want Italian. And depending on what you feed them will depend on the kind of work you get. So, case in point. I had a patient years ago. This was such a formative case, it's so important to me in terms of understanding how this all works. She worked at a prestigious university here in Los Angeles. I'm not going to name names, but she suffered with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. Now, in order to figure that all out, she saw a great doc. He scoped her up, he scoped her down, checked it all out, lots of expensive tests later. Couldn't figure it out. Said, you got IBS, you're just going to have to deal with this. This woman was suffering, so much suffering. She was bent over and the diarrhea, the constipation, I don't want to get into it, but take my word for it. Uncomfortable for an all-around healthy 29-year-old lady. And I'm looking at her diet. She comes in to see me. And I said, hold on a second. You taking a lot of dairy? She says, yeah, I like dairy. It's fantastic. I said, I have a gut feeling, pardon the pun. Without doing any further testing, why don't we just take you off dairy for a week and see how you feel? And she's a little bit resistant, but at this point she's desperate. I get a lot of that. We get a lot of desperate in our practice. And 10 days later, she's doing 50% better. She has a dairy issue. If you feed certain foremen dairy, guess what's going to happen? they're going to suffer and they're going to sputter and they're going to make mistakes on the job. What an easy example of how we can affect our genetics via the choices that we make. We're going to get into that in diet. We're going to talk about how certain choices that seem obvious for some are perhaps completely inappropriate for you. We're going to give you a protocol on how to manage those things. There are a lot of expensive tests we can do, tons. In all the things that we're going to talk about, we could take expensive overnight sleep studies, but oftentimes, and not for everyone, but I'm going to make a sweeping generalization here, so follow me, that a lot of the times making some simple choices and making some trial and error, we can really answer a lot of questions for you. Now that said, if you're one of those people that wants to go in and you want to get that lab work done and you want to go do your studies and you want to have everything looked at, certainly plenty of opportunities for that. And we're going to also set you up some resources on how to go that route as well. We work with doctors across the country. And even if there's not somebody in your area that we know, that we can recommend, there's still plenty of resources you can get at. There's so many amazing physicians that you can turn to that can help you out. Because if you find that you're a non-responder, and here's my big non-responder quiz. You ready? You know how to know if you're a non-responder? Question 1, answer yes or no. Are you getting the results that you want? If you answered no, guess what? You're a non-responder. It's simple as that. Non-responders, the way that I use the term, incorporates everything in the kit and caboodle. So the biggest thing for me is, when it comes to non-response, are the psychological non-responders, the behavioral non-responders. So they may be the ones that are the hidden athletes. I've seen this is great. I've had patients that think, you know what, you're right, doc. I'm an exercise non-responder. It just doesn't work for me. I exercise, nothing changes, nothing happens. Turns out they're psychological non-responders, really. You give them the right motivation, you get the right mindset, and you make those changes, behavioral changes. And I've seen people that have been lifetime nerds, lifetime non-athletes, who just in their minds think, this isn't for me. I'm just kind of flabby. I'm just kind of chunky. I'm a couch guy. I read. This is how I do it. And all of a sudden, you see this dramatic shift. You see video game nerds turning into these Adonises. And it's not that they weren't responding to the exercise. It's that they weren't responding here. And once this got set up, everything else got taken care of just nicely. So, non-responders can happen in a variety of arenas, sometimes multiple arenas. The reason the term is even, I think, really applicable is predominantly in pharmacology. When it comes to pharmacology, I see this, a friend of mine, he's an ophthalmologist, he's an eye doctor. And we're discussing this, and he says, this is a classic picture for me. The patients come in, they have dry eye, for instance. And there's a lot of reason a patient can have a dry eye. But we prescribe a dry eye medication. A certain percentage of patients, they do great on this medication. And a certain percentage, doesn't help. How can that be? An eyeball is an eyeball, right? Nope. An eyeball is not an eyeball. A fat cell is not a fat cell. And you are, just like your mom said, an individual, beautiful, perfect little unique snowflake. And we need to appreciate that. So, finding the perfect solution for you is the answer. I do believe, and some people disagree with me, and I'm happy to discuss this with you. Let's get on the forums and figure this out. I do think that everyone can be strong and everyone can be healthy. And I do think that we can be lean and we can be happy in the process. I'm going to take a little bit of a side, as long as we're talking about psychological non-responders a second ago, and say this, is that if your goal, if you're watching or you're listening, and your goal is to, like I said, take off 5 pounds, take off 10 pounds, smaller weight, you want to get lean, say 50 pounds, doesn't matter. If your goal is to get lean, to get ripped, if you're a guy, that's a great word the guys seem to use, I want to get ripped. They come into my clinic and say, I want to get ripped. I say, okay, I understand. I can give you those tools. I can give you those skills. But the next question I ask is, tell me why. Tell me why. And sometimes there's a long pregnant pause. Sometimes it's immediate. You know, I'm tired of my friends making fun of me because they say I'm this and that and this other thing. My family gives me a hard time for this thing. I feel insecure for this thing. I want this other, and it's always about this external. And that's when I try and have, if they're willing, I try to have that talk with them. Is that if you're looking for outside validation as your motivation to make change, it's a tough road to hoe. People do it. It happens every day. I want to look good in my heels up in the club. It happens. It works. It happens all the time. Although I will stress this, and I'll do it again. I'm on my soapbox. You ready? Looking to make change for something outside of us, an external validator, it's a tough way to go about it. And the problem really is that it's hard to sustain. All right, you knocked off 20 pounds. You look great. Oh my God, Jenny, you look fantastic. I know I lost 20 pounds. Well, that 20 pounds tends to creep. And this is the problem, is that if you look at weight loss statistics, whether we're talking Weight Watchers or the grapefruit diet or anything in between, after about 2 years, people tend to come back to where they started. And that's the heartbreaking bit for me. That's one of the reasons I'm in this, because it's changeable, it's avoidable. I've seen successes many, 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 many times over 15 years in my patient population. And by success, I mean long-term success. Short-term success, piece of cake. You want short-term success, we got this. That's fine. If you're in it for 8 weeks, for 6 months, I can guarantee you no problems. If we're talking big picture stuff, if we're talking about changing diabetes, if we're talking about changing the lives of our grandchildren, if we're talking about, say you're 20, I want you to be lean for the next 50 years. Say you're 60. And I get patients across the spectrum. I get patients that are 20 years old. I get patients that are 7 years old. Say you're 60. I want your next 25 years to be healthy, high functioning, highly active, highly happy years. That's what I'm in it for. That's my motivation. It is heartbreaking to me to see a nation of people, largely through mechanisms that we can change, suffer and struggle. That to me is my big motivator. Again, I'm on that soapbox. Maybe you're with me. I hope so. And I'll step off and say this. The goal of transformation is a very noble and worthy one, but the motivation that is underneath it, that's the critical bit, the psychological bit, the psychology of eating, the psychology of exercise, the psychology of behavior change. That's the thing. If we can get at that, we can change anything. The weight loss thing is a piece of cake. Now, I know we just met, and I've introduced a bunch of information that may be completely foreign to you, and you may be reeling a little bit. So let me make it a little bit easier for you. I compiled a list of questions that I get, my frequently asked questions, the FAQs. I'm going to answer a few of those for you. And then we're going to get into a second section called what I call the shacks. The should ask questions. They're the frequently asked questions that patients ask me all the time. What about this? What about that? And they're the questions that they should be asking. I'm going to answer those too. And then let me get at a couple objections, a couple of critical objections. People say, oh, you know what? What about this? Well, you know, this isn't going to be because of this. So let's get into those. All right, question one of my most common. All right, I'm on board. I want to lose some weight. How much are we talking here? My honest answer, first week, average in my patient populations in my clinics, 4.5 pounds. After that, it decreases. And then on average, we're doing about, 2 pounds a week, depending on if you're a man or a woman, depending on where you're coming from, on your size, depending on your age. Those are my averages. I'm going to be upfront with you. So if that's in line with what you want to do, this is great for you. Beyond 2 pounds, I find is tricky. It's doable. I've worked in Hollywood. So I've worked with some clients that need to get in unbelievable shape in a hurry for movies they're in. And we're talking about shifting 20 pounds in 6 weeks. Sure. It happens. Takes a lot of focus, a lot of commitment, a lot of time. You have that? I've seen it, 100%. I'm talking about averages. I'm talking about most of my patients aren't celebs. Most of my patients aren't Olympic athletes, although I have them. I see professional athletes, and I'm going to tell you a story about an Olympic gold medalist a little bit later. And for the average person who's living the average life, and by average I mean they have a job, they have a family, those are the numbers that we're talking about. Now, How is this different? That's another question I get. There's so many diets out there. Why this? Why now? I think that, I hope that in the last half an hour I've given you an idea of why this is a little bit different. It's not a gimmick. Everyone says that, and it's not a gimmick, but this isn't a gimmick. It's not strategies, it's not tactics. It's a big overview that talks about how it is that we can change our minds, that's going to change our bodies. How we can also change specifics on what we eat and what we do, but the bigger picture, the longevity component, the detox component is a question I get a lot of questions about. What do you mean detox? What is this detox? Everyone talks about detox. What is a detox? I don't like that word being thrown around in sort of a namby-pamby kind of way. Oh, I'm doing a juice detox. I'm doing this kind of detox. For me, detox is something very specific. There are toxic chemicals in our environment. We all know that. Particulates in the air, pollution from cars, plastics that we're exposed to, BPAs, phthalates, you name it. Those affect, wait for it, epigenetics. They affect our DNA in the way we produce genes. For me, detox is specific. For me, it's about avoiding those toxic substances and helping clear out the ones that are already lodged in our bodies. And in case you're wondering, they're in there. We're going to give you some amazing and slightly terrifying statistics on how every one of us at this point has a plethora, a veritable cornucopia, how about that? A veritable cornucopia of different toxic chemicals floating around our bodies and how that affects our genes, our thyroid, our fat cells. So that's a detox question I get really frequently. Here's another question, a big one, and an important one. Is it expensive? Is this approach expensive? I have a family. I'm on a budget. I don't make a gajillion dollars a year. I need to know that I can afford this. I can say, absolutely. The way that we structure this program, the thing that I've put together, because like I said, my clinic isn't filled with professional athletes and celebrities, although we do have them. We actually function partially as a community clinic. So we have folks that are coming in who are financially in very tough shape. And we put together programs that work for them. It turns out that making the right choices is actually less expensive many times than making poor choices. And we're going to get into the details of that. But that for me is very exciting. And you can see why. Because not only, all right, wait for it. Not only am I promising you getting lean, I'm promising you saving money. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. I think for most of us out there, that's a really important piece. So by making these lifestyle changes, we're talking about putting more money in the bank and looking amazing doing it. That's a really big deal. Here's kind of a silly question, but I do get it, so I'll throw it out there. Do you work with celebs? I do. It's not a bragging right. It's sometimes, here's the big secret, it's actually a bigger problem than working with non-celebs. But yes, work in Hollywood, we've been there for almost 20 years, and so naturally, they come along, and I've learned a lot from them. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a couple of the modules. I'll use them as an example. I think it's kind of fun. And I think a more important question is, what about cravings? What about cravings? Whenever people come to me and they start talking about nutrition, they start talking about diet, say, well, I got these cravings. I crave carbohydrate, I crave sweets, I crave salties, I crave, you name it. I crave chocolates, I crave bananas, I crave this other thing, all sorts of stuff. And craving control is critical. Here's a sneak peek. Craving control has a lot to do with the mind game. More so than any real physiological, my hunger, my stomach, my digestive system, it wants these things. It's more upstairs than it is downstairs. So if you're a craver, and most of my patients are, we're going to address that. Now let's move on to the shacks of the world. The questions you should be asking. All right. One of the biggest should ask questions is, how can I stick with this? How can I stick with it short term? This is an 8-week program. How can I stick with this long term, indefinitely in terms of maintenance? That's a question that people often don't ask, but should ask, because that's the pitfall of most weight loss programs. It's that long-term game. Now, we've talked about it a little bit before, but the whole purpose of this idea is I want to give you tools that's going to make this work big picture. This will be the last program that you need. I'll say it. I will put this out in the world. This is the last one that you're going to need, because I'm talking high-level stuff, not ticky-tack stuff. I know I keep talking about that, but that is so critical. People come in. You should hear the stuff. People come in and said, oh, I saw this book and I read it and I started eating 4 pieces of celery in the morning and it was great at first, but for some reason, it stopped working. And people come at me with the craziest stuff. And I say, look, it's not going to do it. We need something better. We're going to need something badder. And I think this is it. After 15 years, I've put everything I have into this. And I've seen it work over and over and over and over and over again. Second, should ask. This is number 2 for me. Is it proven? Well, clinically, which is where I live, as opposed to a lot of the guys I know who are willing to get out there on the internet and start talking about advice and giving you this idea and that idea. Clinically, I've seen this work over and over. From a scientific research side, like I said, I'm willing to take the Pepsi challenge on this. I am happy to provide scads and scads and scads and reams of research based on the stuff that I recommend. Now, the other thing to watch out for, just as a side note, is for any question, I promise you there's a research paper out there that will give you the answer that you want. That said, I feel confident that we're not just putting together some sort of fly-by-night program here, the next acai berry craze. This is stuff that we see working for young people, for old people, and just across the spectrum, be really effective. Now, another thing that people should be asking is, what happens with my hormones? What happens with my energy levels? The thing that we're advocating, the cyclical approach, and we'll talk about this in the diet part, is what I've seen be really successful in terms of lean making, weight loss doing over the course of 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 2 months, 6 months, a year, is coming in and coming out, and coming in and coming out. A cyclical approach. We'll talk a lot about that in the diet segment, because here's the opposite. Sure, you can take a patient, and maybe you're one of these, maybe you've been one of these, maybe you know people like this. You give them liquid drinks in a can, the doctor gives you a bucket of this stuff, and for 6 months, all you do, drink, 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 drink. You got medical shakes coming at you like it's going out of style. And for 6 months, you're losing weight, 3 pounds a week, 75 pounds later. Amazing, everything's working fantastic. You know what happens on day 6 month and 1? The weight, right back uphill. Because the ride is over. And nothing has changed. The only thing that's changed is, sure, patients lost a lot of weight, which is fantastic. Nothing else has changed. And there they go. And this is a great medically supervised model. This isn't some weird stuff they found on the internet. This is a caring doctor sitting there working with his patient. And where are they at? 2 years later, right back where they started. Heartbreaking, right? I know. I've seen it a bunch. So, the thing that I've figured out is cyclical. So, for the folks who need short term, that might be 8 weeks. For the folks that need longer change, that might be 8 weeks times 2. That might be 8 weeks times 3. I've had folks for years be very successful using this kind of program because it's not about deprivation. That's a should-ask question. Is this about deprivation? Am I going to feel deprived? When a client, when a patient, when a person feels deprived in any sense, not just in terms of what they're eating, deprivation breeds a mental state that is really not conducive to being successful. Can you imagine? It's that constant, just waiting. The binging, the sneaking, the late night, the cheating, the guilt, the shame. Show me how you eat, I'll show you how you live. I've seen this a million times. A patient comes in and they're secretive eaters. When no one's around, they'll go in their kitchen, they'll open up and they'll start snacking. And you delve just a little bit further into how they live their lives. And a lot of the times, that's not the only secret. There's other stuff going on that needs to be unpackaged. So when I say they're secretive eaters, I'm not making fun. I'm saying that that's such an important thing. It's an important piece that eat less, exercise more will never touch. You're a secretive eater. There are all sorts of other people. There's the secretive eaters. They're the ones that sneak around. Maybe they're the snackers. They're constantly eating. What about the folks, and men and women, young and old, I see this all the time. The folks that eat because they're bored, I got nothing to do. Snack time. The people eat because they're anxious. Oh my God, I hope he goes to the dance with me. Snack time. And I don't make fun. It's so real, it's so important. Those are the things that exercise more, eat less will never touch, right? What's the motivation for eating? What's the motivation for feeding? It's the thing that we all do, everybody on the planet. We eat, we breathe, we sleep. Those are the three things every single person on the planet has in common. Everything beyond that point, who knows? But those are the three things that are critical. So those are the things that the simple advice of eat less, exercise more are never going to touch. Here's a really critical should ask question is, I have other conditions. Can I do this? Is this right for me? I'll tell you two things. First of all, if you have a heart condition, if you have diabetes, if you have high blood pressure, if you have any number of things, if you have any medical condition, it is so important before making any health changes to discuss it with your doctor. We have patients in our clinics all the time, specifically with these conditions that are trying to fix. We see type 2 diabetes reversing. It's pretty exciting. We see high blood pressure dropping. We see migraines going away. We see all sorts of conditions vastly improving. But it is so important to get with a physician that is on board, that's going to keep an eye on you. Because if you've gotten to the point where you have these conditions, you need some extra monitoring. And it would be incredibly irresponsible for us to say, go ahead, just do whatever, jump on board, give us your time, 8 weeks, we'll take care of everything. I'm not willing to make that statement because I want you to be safe. And I want it to work for you. So what if we have to modify it specifically for you? Guess what? I'm willing to do that. You email us, you interact with us, we're going to make this thing work for you. We worked with doctors all across the country. I have colleagues in New York, I have colleagues in Miami, I have colleagues in Chicago, and we've all shared patients, and frankly, we've had a great time doing it. So come join the fold. We're happy to help you with that. And here's the last should ask question. People should be asking, what's going to happen to my lean muscle mass? Weight loss across the board is much easier when we start talking about just getting on a scale and seeing those numbers go down. Much easier. What's much more tricky is having the fat go and keeping the lean. That's the gold standard. That's the magic. That's the golden goose. That's the Ferrari in the garage. That's the thing you should be asking about. Whatever program you're going to decide to go with, whatever works for you, it has to keep lean muscle mass on. That is so important, especially for seniors, but for everybody else. Maybe you've heard the phrase skinny fat. Not my favorite, but it's out there. And for people who know what it means, people who, from the outside, they look like they are thin. They look like they are in a healthy weight category. But you take a close look, you give them the pinch test. They're fatty. They're still fatty. And there's not a lot of muscle underneath to support the fat on top. And that's a big problem. In fact, it is a bigger problem for a lot of folks than people who are bigger in size, but are muscular. And maybe there's a layer of fat on top of there. But overall, they're actually healthier, stronger, and in the long term, are more likely to have less problems. So keeping on that lean is so important. And that's something that we talk a lot about. And that's a critical piece in terms of getting lean. Weight loss versus muscle. Just 2 seconds on that idea. Abs are made in the kitchen. Glutes are made in the gym. What does that mean? In essence, people who want to get toned, people who want to have better definition, people who want to be lean, by definition, the word lean, it means less fat. There's muscle underneath your fat, I promise you. No matter how out of shape you are, underneath your fat there is muscle. If that fat goes away, you're going to be able to see that toned muscle. If that's your goal, then fat loss is important. But in the process, we can't sacrifice the muscle mass. So that's the last of our should ask questions. Finally, let's talk about a couple objections. And these are majors. I don't want to. I cannot cook. For whatever reason, you're not a cooker. You're not going to become a cooker. I would encourage you to do it. But if you're a person who's like 2 feet in cement, I'm not stepping into that kitchen. I'm just not going to do it. We got you. Believe me, our clinic is in the middle of Los Angeles. We have so many folks that come through for whatever reason, whether it's their job, whether it's their time constraints, whether it's because they're not a cooking person. We've come up with solutions for those people as well. So don't let that be a barrier to entry. I'm going to say it 1,000 more times. I encourage you, I'm going to keep encouraging you to get a little more closer to your food, right? When your whole experience of food is, it comes out of a plastic container and goes into your mouth, it's like having a kid that's delivered to you as a teenager. The first thing goes wrong, you were just going to strangle that kid and throw him out the window. If you have had to see that beautiful little baby grow into a teenager, you're probably going to be a little bit more patient. Same thing with food. I know folks, we've inspired some of our patients to start little gardens. And by little gardens, I mean like a basil plant, a single tiny basil plant growing in the window of their kitchen. And you'd be surprised if you've never grown a plant. And if you have, you know what I'm talking about. And if you've never grown a plant, having the satisfaction of taking the leaves off that little tiny basil that you grow is so satisfying. I've had folks come in and say, you know, I cooked last night, I cooked with the basil, and it was so exciting. And that's the tiniest little thing can make a really big difference. So I do encourage folks to get a little closer to their food, whether that means maybe a tiny little basil plant, maybe planting something on your balcony, you may have a backyard. We have folks that have gone full Monty and they have raised bed gardens in their backyards. And it has been such an exciting little adventure for them and for their kids. And anyhow, I get a little soapboxy about it, but I think it's important. It's important. So that said, the cooking thing is a really important one. Objection number 2. I can't, I won't exercise. Can't is one thing. We certainly have folks who have very, very profound, severe arthritis. Exercising is not really in the cards for them. We have people that are just so psychologically geared to, I will not. You know, oftentimes there was that childhood thing where for whatever reason, they are not going to exercise. This is not going to work for me. I said, hold on. There are so many other ways to engage in terms of getting lean. Remember what we said? Abs are made in the kitchen. So if for whatever reason exercise is not in the cards for you, one, I'd say maybe, just maybe, I bet we can find something that's going to work for you. Unless you are completely bedridden and bound, there is some form of exercise that is going to work for you. I've seen people be incredibly successful and transform their lives with simple walking. I've seen folks transform their lives with hitting the gym like gorilla monster super beasts, men and women, and going from almost zero athleticism to full-blown, just crushing it monster athletes, and which is so exciting. But both are amazing because both are incredibly transformative. So on the one hand, I bet you there's something we could find. And even if there isn't, even if not, it's not mission critical. There's so many points of intervention. There's so many things that go into the epigenetic picture. Our activity levels, the food that we eat, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the stress, the sleep, our body composition, right? The fat that we keep already interacts with how our metabolisms work. There's so many points of intervention that even if one thing is completely off the charts for you, for now or forever, there's still a lot of ways for us to do this. And objection number 3, I don't have time. I don't have time. It's a big one, right? Time and money. Those are the two things that no one ever seems to have enough of. Well, I'll tell you what, when it comes to time, I am so sensitive to that issue. This is definitely something that's completely workaroundable. My 2 big goals going into this was, let me craft a program that's going to overcome the major objections that I see with my patients every day. And time is the biggest one. I don't have time, I have a baby. Sure, that's incredibly labor intensive. We put together a baby exercise workout for you. All right? Busted. I don't have time. Well, we figured out a way to get you food that's going to be nutritious, that's going to be healthy, that's going to help you get lean, and it's going to save time in the kitchen. Busted. You have time. Now, time option number 3 is, it's a motivation question. A lot of times people will get behind the time thing. I'm too busy, I can't do it, because they're not ready. They're not motivated, or they think they're not motivated. Oh, you know, I'm just not quite there yet. I'm not quite there yet. Let's talk about motivation for a second. There's a professor, Dr. Prochaska, and the motivation model that he developed were the 6 stages of motivation. And it starts with the pre-contemplative stage where you're not doing anything. You're not even thinking about it. You're sitting on the couch, you're like, oh, I'm gonna check this out. It has nothing, it's not even on your radar. Now, you get into the contemplative phase where, oh, you heard somebody at work talking about something and you kind of sparks a little idea where maybe I could change something. Maybe I could get a little leaner. maybe I could change some of my habits. Maybe I'm not as happy with my physique. Maybe I'm not as happy with my health as I'd like to be. Start thinking about it. You get into the planning phases. You get into doing phases. You get into the maintenance phases. And then with certain behaviors, you get into the ending phase. You've accomplished said task. When it comes to our health, we never really get to the termination phase. We never get to phase 6 because it's an ongoing battle. It's not like smoking. You don't stop smoking, that's it, you never smoke again. You're gonna eat, right? You may start off eating this one thing or this stuff, right? And then you transition to eating this other stuff. But there is no stopping phase. So it's this complicated model of where are you at? So one of the great things you should probably stop and ask yourself is, how motivated am I? Where am I? Am I ready to make some changes, or am I ready to sort of half start and then maybe fail again and then feel terrible about it, and that just sets up this cycle that I've been going through for maybe a long time? Or am I pretty ready to jump in here with both feet? So I developed a quiz. We're going to take it right now, the motivation quiz. Question 1, can you hear me? If you answered yes to question 1, you are sufficiently motivated. All right. Now, I know what you're thinking. After going through this whole multi-stage, where are you in this thing model, let me stop and say that that's one model of motivation. And there's plenty of research to suggest that people, if you drag them kicking and screaming along to transform and make changes, can still be successful. That's the wonderful news. People who are, and it's usually wives. This has been my experience. I'm not making a generalization. It's usually wives. It's the wife who grabs the husband and said, hubby, forget it. We're doing something. And grabs him by the cuffs, or grabs him by the collars, or grabs him by whatever she grabs him by, and starts dragging him along. And you know what? Things happen, and change can start. So if you're committed enough to already being here, and we're hanging out together, and we're learning together, and we're growing together, you are sufficiently motivated. So you can take that little weight off your shoulders saying, I don't know. You do know. If you made it this far, you're ready to start making some changes, so you have passed the motivation quiz already. So to wrap up our first week, here's what you need to do. Every week you're going to listen or watch. As you go through the program, your workbook has a daily set of activities, a place to journal, a place to write some thoughts, and you want to follow along with that. Every week there are going to be some lessons and some things to apply, and they're going to build on each other. So over the course of 8 weeks, we're going to get you from where you are today to a leaner, healthier, and I'm going to boldly say happier person in 8 weeks than from where you started. Watch every week, listen every week, follow along in your workbook, and check in with us. Send us some emails. Check in on Facebook. Get that community going. You'll be glad you did. I don't have the words. I honestly don't have the words. After 15 years of practice, this is, I'll admit to you, my first foray into the world of the internet. And I'm so excited. I really am, because there are only so many people I can touch in my practice. There's only so many people you can talk to in a day. The idea that I might be able to share 15 years of experience and my message with so many people out there that I'll never have a chance to maybe meet in person is such an exciting moment for me. And I hope that you can feel some of that. And I hope that you'll stick with us, because I promise you, if you do, I guarantee it, as a matter of fact, I'll do it. I guarantee you that this is going to be a transformative experience for you. Let's hang out for 8 weeks. I'm not just a person on the camera. I'm not just a person in your ear. Email me, find me. I'll interact with you. I hope I can help you. That's my goal. And hang in there. Let's get to know each other. I hope to provide you with a lot of tools, some information you didn't have, some skills that you didn't have, some motivation that maybe you were lacking. And I really think that we're going to do some great things. I'll see you next week.